Good afternoon everybody, Austin here, AW Services. So it's Operation Pump Trolley build, yet another. Just a quick tip really, or a few tips. If you're wanting to make a pump trolley, but to have a professional look about it, to make it look really tidy inside. When you look at all the water-fed pole pump trolleys that are self-builds, DIY projects that you see on YouTube, you see that a lot of people, bless them, are using bits of wood to mount speed controllers, batteries, etc. It's not a bad thing, but it's the amateur home gamer. If you want to up your game and have a tidier appeal, but want to make your inside of your pump box look nice, but also give you a surface to fix your components, your pump to, then I'll give you a little bit of a professional secret. If you go and get yourself a cheap A4 white basic chopping board from Tesco's for £2, this is 4mm polypropylene, and you measure the diameter of the box, you actually have a nice internal tray, excuse me, for fitting your components. If you get one of these enclosure boxes and you search on Google for galvanized or mild steel enclosure backplates, they're very expensive. Sometimes they're more expensive than the actual enclosure itself. So 3mm, 4mm polypropylene, you know, it was a food chopping board. It now sits in the box. I will then measure out the centers so I can fix this to the inside of the box, but then I can put my pump on there using self tappers or small nuts and bolts, but it's going to give it a much tidier finish. I've got a level flat plane to fix to, but more than anything, it looks freaking wicked. If you like the video, got any questions, leave them in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe also. One more quick tip. If you're marking out, if you want to put things in the front of your enclosure, if you wrap it in masking tape or applicator paper you use for sign writing or labels, so A4 wide, A3 wide applicator paper, line that over your box. You can mark out wherever you want to cut out. It keeps the front of your box clean, it keeps your work area looking good, but when you've cut all your holes, made all your fixings, you peel the paper off and you've got a pristine finish. Have a good afternoon, enjoy the rest of the weekend. Bye bye. Nice charger lead. Beautiful. Main battery cable, 2 female spay connectors, insulated and then double insulated just for abrasion resistance. Just something I do, always go that little extra mile, but I like good connections. So main battery cable, job done. Good evening, Austin back. AW Services, AW Cleaning Services. So just as demonstration purpose, got my Rectus 21 bulkhead fitting on the side of my enclosure. I have my water-fed pole hose. This is a spare pole with a sacrificial brush on it. There's my Rectus 21 fitting. And just push that in the side of my box. But look at that for a nice tidy finish. Release, pops out. Again, in, release. There we go, proper job. Good evening, Austin here. So it's a bit more work on the pump trolley to get it complete. Not far off now. I've had to wait for a few parts. I'm not desperately waiting to get it done, so there's no rush, but it's nice to get something done in a leisurely manner. But I've just marked out the dimensions for my electronic flow controller, nice and rectangular. So as you can see on my box, I've divided my box so I have my center mark, and I've then grid squared it off. Red areas are the actual screws for the lid, so that's a no cut area. But I've got the screen for the 3-digit display centralized, so I've drawn around it exactly. That's the inner dimensions, so when I cut a hole and poke it in, it's going to stay in there, it's not going to fall through. But a good tip when cutting ABS or plastic enclosure boxes is just take your time. You know, you can use a jigsaw, but with a jigsaw you're going to get a lot of vibration. And you're not going to be able to, unless you can control it 100%, then you might get a good job. But if you slip and you go outside of your line, you then end up with a box that looks quite crap, to be honest. So mark it out. The best thing you can do, use a Stanley knife and just some sweeps with a blade, and you know, just like that. Magic, hey? A very clean cut rectangle. No swarf, perfectly clean cut, and that's just with a few passes with a Stanley knife. Top tip of the evening. A very good evening everybody, Austin here. Welcome to AW Services. So my pump trolley build is complete. Finito. I have finished. Just have a quick walk around, as you can see. The lid's open so I can show you all the magic inside. But where do we start? So on top of the main control panel we have main power on and off battery isolator switch. We have our manual start stop for our pump. We have our variable resistor pot, which is our flow control adjustment, a battery voltage indicator, and our 3-segment display which comes on when it's powered up. Also with this unit, it will run on a designated remote control, 433 megahertz, so when someone presses their cheap wireless doorbell, it will turn my pump on and off. I have a handy truck which seems to be the very standardized truck for making water-fed pole pump trolleys. I have a Tesco's £2 non-stick aluminium baking tray, or a crisping tray as they like to call it, as my backsplash, and it also works well to hold the 25-litre water container. I've mounted that to my sack truck by the means of a 32mm P-clip, stainless steel marine grade fixings as well, so there won't be any rust or corrosion. I'm just using a brush and a pole system I made, which was a sacrificial brush, just to do shop fascias because they were covered in bird's mess, so didn't want to damage all of my nice Unger brush, high flow brushes, so I thought I'd make a brush. So looking at the internals of the box, we have a standard ABS electrical enclosure. The dimensions for this box, if you're wishing to make one, are 300 by 220 by 120 mil. If you'd like any of the wiring diagrams, a full parts list for all of the items used within this build, I'll quite happily send them upon request. That's not a problem, very easily done because I know what I'm doing. So in the main box we have our Emylo, as you can see where my screwdriver is pointing, my wireless relay switch receiver, 433 megahertz. That's wired in very easily. You've got supply, positive and negative from the battery, and then you've got output, load, positive and negative. Very easy to wire in. Always remember when using switches, mains voltage, low voltage, I tend to always switch between the lives. That's the way I was taught. We have our 12 volt diaphragm pump, maximum 5 amps, 4 litres a minute rated output flow, and 100 psi. Got a terminal block which just basically gives me a breakout connection for my main battery supply. So my main battery comes into here and it's terminated. 7.5 amp fuse to protect the load, which protects the battery voltage gauge. The LED 3-segment display for my flow controller, and also the switch gear and the receiver. I've used 8mm clear bore hose, Jubilee clipped, stainless steel Jubilee clipped onto the pump. Don't ever use double ear clips on pumps, because when you compress the clips you will actually crack the pump and deem it unusable. So our battery voltage gauge is wired in, our flow controller, our variable resistor flow control, which is part of the circuit and part and parcel of the flow controller, on and off switch, and our manual start and stop switch. So basically, to cut a long story short, your battery supply goes to the junction box. I then have the battery voltage gauge, the flow controller, and the LED within the on and off switch as my load. That all goes through the fuse, that's wired together, and then all the commons, negatives are joined up together, and I'm just switching in between the lives basically. I'm using a U-cell 12 volt 12 amp hour sealed lead acid battery. Always good tip as well, you've got to keep track of things you buy, write on it when you purchased it. So 17th of the 6th 2009, DOP stands for date of purchase. On the side of my pump I have a rectus 21 bulkhead fitting, which I've chosen. I think it suits it quite nice, pops in and out quite nicely, as you can see, very positive. And then my water inlet, I don't like just hacking holes in boxes. My water inlet actually goes through a 20mm electrical compression gland, which just gives me a bit of abrasion resistance on that hose and makes it look nice and tidy. I have my charging port here, a 16mm 2-pole aviation style plug, most commonly found, the 4-pole versions were most commonly found on CB radios back in the 80s, so a lot of you young guns won't even know what I'm talking about, but that's a 16mm 2-pole waterproof plug. That goes straight to the battery, which is diode protected, so my charger will go into there and it will charge the battery straight up. 25 litre water container, as you can see. So that's pretty much it. Just a demonstration. I'll turn the unit on. Got my remote control. As you can see, it works nicely. I can also operate this via the main switch as well. So there you go, there's my water-fed pole pump trolley build. If you like the video, please subscribe. Any comments or questions, leave them below. Don't forget to like the video, give it a thumbs up, and also hit the bell icon for more updates as and when I post a video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.